To explain why, I'll start with an analogy that I think anyone can understand. We love analogies here. So there's a nightclub with velvet rope out front. The bouncer, massive guy, controls who gets in. And he has a secret deal with one particular drug dealer inside. That dealer has the monopoly on selling gear inside the club. Everyone else who tries to sell gets thrown out. The bouncer keeps competition away, and in return, he gets a cut of every sale. Business is good, the bouncer gets his cut, and both the dealer and the bouncer go to the same after parties together on an island or something like that with underage people. Anyway, so now people inside start complaining. The dealer is getting too much money. So they go to the bouncer and say, "Mate, you have to sort this out, you have to tax him more." And the bouncer says, "You're right, I'll save you guys, I'm gonna tax him more." Who just got richer? The bouncer. Did the problem go away? Did the monopoly end? Did anyone else get to compete? No. The dealer is still the only one allowed to operate. He now just has to increase the price and he can blame it on the bouncer. The bouncer still controls the door, now has more money than ever, and he can also say that he's preventing the dealer from getting too rich. Both are happy at the expense of regular people. So around the world, but mostly in the UK, recently lots of people have been talking about Gary Stevenson's new documentary on Channel 4 called How to Get Filthy Rich. So I want you to understand well both mainstream sides of the argument, the ones you will hear on the telly or see on the newspapers. The conservatives basically say the rich will live. It's true, some might live. Capital flight is a reality, that can happen. A handful of billionaires might move their registered address to a different country to avoid taxes. And you know what? Historically, moving away has been a really good way of escaping tyrannies. We shouldn't oppose that. I think we should be grateful that we all can run away from governments. But we should also remember that it's often easier for people with not much capital to move than it is for people who have deep stakes and real physical assets in a country. The second argument you hear from this side is that the rich deserve their wealth. They earned it, it's theirs. And look, I understand that point of view. Property matters, effort matters. But when you have been handed a state-enforced monopoly, when your competitors were killed off by regulation, when you are protected by intellectual property rules, when the central banking and government's monetary expansion inflated your assets while everyone else's wages stagnated, at that point saying, "I earned this," starts to sound a little thin, don't you think? In this case, my friend, the bouncer helped you having such a big chunk of the market. And then there's the other side, very predominant. And I want to be honest with you, most of what Gary Stevenson says about inequality is correct. The solution, not so much, in my opinion. But the problem is real. Wealth is concentrating at the top faster than at any point since the early 20th century. Money compounds, it's true. People who own things get richer, while people who work get poorer. Local businesses are closing, housing is impossible, inflation has eaten savings, a whole generation of people are working full-time and still cannot afford a house, or they cannot afford to live in the very places they grew up in. Now, billionaires, in my opinion, are not the cause, but a symptom. This is the main thing I want you to take from this video. So let's address what no one is addressing in this wealth tax conversation. How did we end up with billionaires in the first place? Is it an extreme talent, as some people say? Extreme hard work? Is that enough to become a millionaire? I don't think so. All of them got helped by a specific set of state interventions that tilted the playing field. Let me really quickly go through some of them because I'm sure some you've never heard of and they are very important, so at least we know what we're talking about. Bailouts. In 2008, governments around the world, including here, used public money to save the banks. The financial institutions that caused the crash were rescued. Their shareholders kept their wealth. Their executives kept their bonuses. The people at the bottom lost their homes. The state subsidized people at the top. The gains stayed private, the losses were socialized. Intellectual property. Patents and copyright granted and enforced by the state give companies legal monopolies over ideas, products and processes. That is not a free market. That's a government-issued license that excludes competitors. Pharmaceutical companies can charge £80,000 for a drug that costs £200 to produce because the state, through IP, made it illegal for anyone else to produce it. Big tech owns the algorithms, loads of patents, the platforms, the infrastructure protected by law. People panic when you criticize IP, but they have to understand this. Property rights arise to manage scarce resources, whereas ideas are what is called non-rivalrous. If I share an idea with you, I still have it, and you now have a copy of it too, for free. What so-called intellectual property grants is therefore not ownership of a scarce thing, but a legal privilege, the power to restrict how others might use their own bodies, their own minds, or their property to express, reproduce, or apply that idea. Regulations. Big companies love regulation. People think it's the other way around, but big companies do love regulation because complex regulations kills small competitors. A startup cannot afford the compliance department. A local business cannot navigate the licensing requirements. Some of the people writing those regulations are often former executives from the very industries being regulated, or at least their friends. This is called regulatory capture, and it's one of the most reliable ways the state creates and protects big business. You can research that term, it's very interesting. Central bank credit. Since 2008 especially, central banks have kept interest rates near zero and pumped money into the financial system through quantitative easing. Where did all that new, false, fake, counterfeited money go? Obviously, because people are not stupid, into assets, stocks, property, bonds, things that already wealthy people own. If you own assets, your wealth inflates automatically with monetary expansion. If you own nothing, you fall further behind. The central banks from around the world did that, deliberately with... I should not include that. Subsidies, grants, tariffs, government contracts. You can look this up. The biggest companies in the world are, in many cases, also the biggest recipients of government money. Defense contractors, weapons, energy giants, agriculture conglomerates. The fossil fuel industry receives billions in subsidies annually, and they've been helped historically by the governments, while also lobbying to prevent competitors from entering the market. Elon Musk's companies received billions in government contracts and subsidies. Amazon Web Services, for example, is a key infrastructure provider for state institutions. The line between private company and state-backed entity is much blurrier than many people like to think. This is a story of the state producing artificial winners. The state is the mechanism through which wealth concentration was built, protected, and perpetuated. The bouncer didn't just fail to stop the dealer. The bouncer is the dealer's business partner. So let's go back to Gary's solution. Tax the wealthy, give the money to the state, fund public services. He seems to be concerned with the government not having enough money. So even if it worked perfectly, even if you got that 2% from billionaires and they paid every penny of it, what have you actually changed? You've made the state richer. You've given more money and more legitimacy to the very institutions that created the conditions for extreme wealth concentration in the first place. The whole mechanism, the whole structure stays intact. The bailouts don't stop, the IP system doesn't change, regulatory capture doesn't end, the central bank doesn't stop inflating asset prices, the subsidies keep flowing, and the benefits keep flowing because people need them. Is that really a flex? Politicians love to say, oh, we are increasing our social expenditure. Oh, so I guess people are worse now. Is that a flex? A flex, to me, would be, guys, the government is spending almost no money this year since everyone's doing so great that they are able to afford their own things like functional, responsible, developed adults. But anyway, so basically they have asked the bouncer to take more of the dealer's money. The bouncer is delighted. All the dealer has to do is to adjust prices up and the club stays exactly the same. There's a term for this and I want you to use it carefully because it's a serious claim. Controlled dissidence. And I'm not saying Gary Stevenson is a plant. I'm not saying he's paid by the establishment to misdirect. He might well be completely sincere. But the function of the wealth tax argument, whatever the intention, is to channel the public anger about inequality into a solution that leaves the state's power untouched. In practice, it strengthens it. It gives people a solution, allegedly tax, without questioning anything else. It's very easy, it's very comfortable, let's carry on, everything's the same, but more free things for people. Yay! And it leaves in place every single mechanism that will, 10 years from now, produce the next generation of billionaires, or probably trillionaires, or whatever is coming, if they keep printing money. So what does address the root cause? If the state is not a neutral referee, if it's an interested party, if it's the main mechanism through which wealth is concentrated, protected and reproduced, the question is, why is the only solution anyone is allowed to imagine one where we give more power and more money to the very institution that built this mess? Gary's economics side says, let the state fix it. His conservative critics say, don't touch the state-backed order that made us rich. Order! Order! Both sides in different ways protect the same machine. What I'm asking you to sit with is this. If the mechanism that made billionaires is the state and the only solution on the table is more state, then What exactly are we changing? Maybe the real conversation we need to have is not about wealth tax. Maybe it's about who gets to make the rules, how much power they are allowed to have, and whether that power has ever been on the side of the people it claims to protect. That's a harder conversation. It doesn't make for a feel-good documentary ending, let me tell you. But it is the conversation I think we actually need. If you want to keep having it, you know what to do. Subscribe, leave a comment, and please tell me where you think I'm right or wrong. And especially, if this whole thing has you feeling crushed by problems that are way bigger than you, governments you cannot control, I made a whole video about that feeling. Why you should stop feeling guilty about problems you cannot fix. And what to do with that energy instead. I'll put it here on screen. Thank you.